Welcome, everyone, to Flow at Work. I'm Emma Thomas, and today I'm joined by a special guest. We have Jennifer Davis. She is a functional consultant on the Americas team, and she is an invaluable member to many of the projects and implementations that we do. So, welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks, Emma. Fantastic to be here.
Well, what I'm excited to have you do a little show and tell for us. I heard that you just did a very successful implementation of Workplace Central for a customer recently. And that is an area of the platform that I personally have been very curious to learn a little more about. I think we're getting a lot of interest in that. And so I was hoping that you might be prepared to do a little demo for me. And so, if that's something you're feeling ready to do.
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked. Let me go ahead and
Excellent.
share my screen. And just as a warning, everything that I'm about to show is demo data. It's all out of the box, so we haven't really configured or added anything special to what you're about to see.
Perfect, perfect. Any viewer or listener watching this should know that Platformation always pushes out of the box configuration. We try to really steer customers away from customization. So I love that your focus is on the out of the box product.
Absolutely. And whatever makes the client the most happy, whatever makes it the easiest to maintain in the future. So when they don't have us just on a moment's notice and they need to send an email maybe for something, whatever we can do to make it easiest. So out of Workplace Central, and like you said, a lot of clients have been asking for this. It's a very hot topic. And I think ServiceNow did a fantastic job of making everything a one-stop shop. It's all very visual, it's all very interactive, and it's actually fun to get in there and just play around with it. But up here at the top, you might be used to using the navigation filter, but they have workspaces now. And WSD has everything housed inside of Workplace Central. And you can see when I load it in, let me close out the tab. I have the dashboards itself, and this is the workplace analytics. And from here, any of the dashboards that you're used to seeing in WSD that you can come in and see the data back here, you can actually access all of them here. And I hope these look a little familiar. We have reservation management, visitor registrations, cases, and I don't have to ever actually go anywhere else. I can open up any of these. And again, one-stop shop, and I can look over all of this data, see some of the different metrics and how it might apply to our teams.
Wow. So it's
And
like a dashboard of dashboards, if you will. Dashboardception.
absolutely the motherboard of dashboards. And some of these are going to be a little more familiar as we dig into them, but these are the components that you can actually manage, and your teams can come through and monitor and even update the information you'll see here. And you can do that by using these tabs on the left. And I'm just going to start from the top and go down, and you'll actually see the data come into play the farther we get.
Okay.
Space optimization, again, up here at the top, we'll just hover so we can see it. From here, this is where we can actually come in and we can visually see the spaces we're using, the neighborhoods that our organization might be using, moving users to spaces, moving those spaces to neighborhoods, and all of that's automatically created by the system itself. So it's not something that I have to come in and create individual cases for. As long as I save it, the system's going to automate everything for us.
Wow.
How that works, we'll go ahead and create a new one just so we can see it.
And these
Yeah.
scenarios, would these be part of the implementation process? So you would work with the customer to define the different scenarios, or is this something that's sort of a leave behind action that they may do, as they're using the product?
The scenarios themselves, this is something that they can do and manage in the future. So as an optimization itself, this is just the hub, and then each of these is almost a deployment if you could. So based off of the data that we would normally implement in WSD, the users can take that data and start actually matching it to what they use in real life.
And then let's go actually one step back to Jennifer. What is a scenario? What would the customer use the scenarios for?
I would say one of the best use cases is maybe they had a type of renovation and the data is no longer relevant, or if we have a larger move that I'm trying to actually set and deploy, I can move an entire team of users at once, and I can move the spaces into a different neighborhood, and I can also assign those spaces to those users.
I see. And would it be appropriate to use scenarios for recurring activities, or would this really truly be for one-off situations that don't happen on a recurring or a scheduled basis?
Definitely those one-off situations. These are going to be hard changes that occur to your spaces.
Okay.
Um, Anything recurring, you can always do on the database side, though.
Okay.
So just so we can see that in action, and I'll just say it's going to be simple. Maybe I have a group of IT users that we're moving from the first floor to the second floor.
That is a perfect use case. I hear about that all the time, especially now with people doing all sorts of space optimization with, managing and trying to navigate what they're doing with their leases. So,
Absolutely. And based off the data that we have, we've just had some neighborhoods created. And if I cared, maybe if we had users assigned to offices, I can specify that here so I only see those. But I'm going to go ahead and keep it so we can see all of the entire building in action.
so you could do, building is XYZ Arlington headquarters or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Or if we had spaces that maybe they were VIP, don't use these, we can filter those out.
Mm.
And you'll see here, I got that update saying go ahead and let it process. And now that it's in draft, we can actually see that scenario. And the first thing that we load into is going to be a stack plan. And this is just a larger view of some of the spaces I have allocated. So if I have spaces assigned to HR or marketing or finance, I can see it here. And if I actually visually want to see these and make changes, I can come to the floor map. And this might look a little familiar. If I move it around, this is exactly what you'll be seeing on the reservation portal, except now I
Yeah.
can actually come in and edit it.
Ah, yes, this does look very familiar to me. So, yeah.
And I don't ever have to guess or color coordinate anything because I have a legend at the bottom right. And so I don't have to guess which one blue is. I know it's going to be HR. And as far as how I can actually do this, again, you can see this is the first floor. And I did say that I'm moving IT. I have these two spaces for IT on the right. Actually, it is pink. I have one space for IT on the right. And if I did want to assign it anywhere else here, you can see I'm just clicking and I can interact with these spaces. And I can also mass select these if I hold down Shift, and I can lasso multiple spaces at the same time. And from here, I can actually update the allocation. I can change it or add a new allocation. And I'm going to go ahead and say maybe these are also some new IT locations. And I can apply it. And automatically my changes are reflected here.
Wow.
Some of the other nice things, and this has been another hot topic clients ask for, is going to be assigning these users to these spaces. And you can see I'm not limited to a single floor. I can update it to the second floor. And if I know that this desk is an IT user, for example, I can select it and I can assign it to an actual user. And I know sometimes we have shifts. We have some users who come in the morning and some come in at night, and maybe they share the same desk. I can actually assign it to multiple users.
Interesting. Okay, that seems like a good use case as well. Especially too, I know a hot topic right now is the desk to employee ratio. And it used to be traditionally 1 to 1, but now with so many companies going hybrid and that no longer necessarily being the case, you might have a 1 desk to 2 or 3 employee ratio. I can see where that would be a very important requirement.
Absolutely, of course. And I will say the space optimization dashboard, what we previously saw in the beginning, and those reports, again, out of the box, I didn't have to set those up. As long as we start using our data, those reports start pulling metrics for us. And that's going to be actually shown. How much space are you using? How could you actually maximize your ratio?
Wow.
And I'm not going to make this one too complex. We just have a couple of different neighborhood assignments and a user assignment. And if I come to the execution plan, actually, let's make sure we save those changes. And thank you, ServiceNow, for not losing them. We still have everything here. And you'll notice now I have a publish button at the top right. And so if I am working with my team, at this point, I'm the only one that can see the scenario planning. And once I'm ready for another manager or someone else on the team to look it over, I can publish it. And that's just to say that now this plan's public and everyone can let me know, hey, this user is actually at the desk on the right, or those offices are already assigned to a different neighborhood. And I can come in and I can fix it, but another manager has to let me know they don't have the rights to update this without me. But as long as everything looks good, I can actually save everything and send it off for approval.
And just to clarify too, I think when you say public, it wouldn't necessarily be public to every user in the system, but I would assume it's still locked down by users who have certain WSD roles in the system. Would that be correct?
That is correct. It's going to be
Okay,
just your space management managers.
perfect. I know that's probably a concern for some facilities managers if, maybe a move hasn't been announced yet and you're trying to just do some preliminary planning to see where people could go. You wouldn't want to cause mayhem.
Absolutely. Everyone gets to start picking their own desks.
Right, right.
And from here, I'm actually just going to close this and refresh it. That way we can see it live. And once I'm ready, again, all of my changes are still going to be reflected here. I can go ahead and send it for approval. And that's to say now I'm getting my final managers of yes or no on this. And I don't have
And
to leave again. Everything's in Workplace Central.
are approvals required for this, or could an organization configure that to, maybe not require approvals if they don't need to?
We actually had this exact request from a client, and we found a nice workaround. Again, it's just a safety precaution, is they themselves can be an approver. And so you can see I'll have system administrator on here as long as I have that role, but this is restricted to just those WSD approvers.
Okay.
So as long as we have them in a group, we can technically skip this, but everything on here, as much as you can see, is configurable exactly like the back end of ServiceNow.
Perfect.
And since I am an admin, I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to approve this first one. And refresh. Again, as long as someone approves it, the rest of them aren't required. It's not a majority vote by any means. And I'm just going to close it out to refresh it again. Again, you wouldn't normally be deploying a scenario plan as fast as this. It would be over several days at a time. And I can confirm, yes, everything still looks good. Nothing got corrupted along the way. I can actually deploy it at this point, and I can create a move project. I'm just going to leave this unchecked for now.
But what would that do? Without going into the details of showing us, what would that trigger if you checked that?
It would give us a nicer way of grouping all of the cases that were just created into one. But just so we can see move management in action, I've kind of left them as their own individual move cases. So as you can see, I can do it in the beginning and I can group everything, or I can also come back and maybe if I forgot, it's never too late to group them together.
Okay.
And I do have this up here where it says I can track the changes. And so if I did want to see the move cases in one spot, I can see all of them were automatically created. And you can see the system actually did all of this for me. I didn't have to manually update the neighborhood for any of these. And now I have move cases for these two users. And so if they had assets tied to their account or to the location, the system automatically includes that in this move request, so nothing gets forgotten.
Excellent. That is such a powerful tool.
It's really nice how ServiceNow made sure everything's related in some way, so we don't have to worry about that in the implementation. And this is actually the life cycle for scenario planning. And so we've just seen space optimization.
Perfect.
And again, this interacts the same way as any of the dashboards we already use in ServiceNow, so I don't have to worry about if these operate differently. I can come in and I can see that data, and I can always dig down into it as I need to.
Now, Jennifer, what version is your PDI running on?
This is actually on the Washington, D.C. release.
Okay, perfect. So keep that in mind, viewers, depending on the version of the release that your instance is running on, some of this functionality may or may not be available. Some of the UIs may look a little different. But that is also another great plug for staying out of the box so that you can upgrade your instance regularly to follow ServiceNow's releases. So just keep that in mind as well. But continue on, Jennifer.
Thank you. And WSD is one of those tricky cases where they update several times a year. So we really do try to push for out of the box. And I know I clicked on it while I was talking, but preventative maintenance is the next one in the list. And this is fantastic for not having to manually go through and maintain all of your assets. And so if I do have any type of a facility, and you can see I have one for air conditioning already, I don't have to come through and say, hey, we need to make sure the air conditioners are getting cleaned every single month. Otherwise, we might have to call in an outside vendor, and then that's an even bigger headache. And again, all of these are out of the box.
So facilities assets such as, the air conditioning, probably refrigerators, anything that would be in the office, electrical lighting, etc. So they could presumably create as many plans as they have facilities assets that need regular maintenance, which is probably many things if I had to guess. Yeah, that seems like a very powerful tool as well.
Exactly. Hundreds, if not thousands of assets, and hopefully you're not using an Excel to keep track. You can always come in, and as long as your data is in ServiceNow and having it well maintained is definitely nice. That way you know what you're clicking on and you know what you're associating. It makes the process so much easier. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new plan so we can see that in action. And so again, I'm on that preventative maintenance workspace. I can select new. And from here, I can say what type of a plan I'm creating. And so if our organization is more based on time and I can group several assets together, I could always say that this is our one annual cleaning. But if it is asset dependent or location dependent, I can always add that here. And I'm just going to say air conditioners again because we have that data ready. So I'll say it is a new air conditioner.
Interesting. So one facilities manager could make one maintenance plan for multiple assets in one building if those assets needed to be serviced at the same time, right? That's the use case, yeah.
Absolutely. And you're not restricted again to any specific type of a model. You can add as many models as actually loop together, just as long as they would all follow that same plan.
And when you say looped together, would that be something that we at Platformation, if we're doing this implementation and guiding the customer through it, would we identify that as part of the configuration process, or would that sort of also be maybe leave behind just sort of ongoing general administration of the system, or both?
I would almost say it would be heavily reliant on how accurate the client's data is.
Mm,
Um, and so as long as we have pre-existing processes, we know what assets we can pull together, we will absolutely sit down with the client, try to consolidate the data to make the most sense and to make it as easy on them as possible. Um, and we would want to actually help them set this up ahead of time. That way it's just less work on the back end.
makes sense.
And so these, again, normal ServiceNow fields, the start date, and I'm going to say that this is going to be just over the weekend, maybe while everyone's outside of the office.
That is smart. Otherwise, you might have some unhappy employees if you're taking the air conditioner offline. I don't want to be in that office.
Absolutely. And you can actually specify and drill down even more at the schedule stage. And I'll show that just in a moment. And earlier I did say you can do models. So as long as you have your assets and your models here, and I can also say if it's for a location, maybe if I have an entire building that needs service and I don't care for the models, I can group everything by that. I'm going to keep
Excellent.
model just so we can see it. And you can see I have 3 that I already have added, and I'm going to go ahead and just add 2.
Mm. So that's good to know too. You can still add multiple models even if you're doing the maintenance plan by model rather than location.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And you don't have to include all of the assets underneath of that model. So for example, all 6 of these are in use, so I would want the maintenance to occur. But if one was retired or in the warehouse, I have the option to leave out one of those assets. And from here, you can see the plan is saving as the wizard is guiding us through it. And so now I have the option either to make a new schedule, or if I know this is going to match an existing one, maybe if we have refrigerators that get cleaned every month, I can copy it from one of my other maintenance plans I'm already using.
Mm. We do love a good setup wizard, don't we? It makes it so easy.
And I have options too. And I'll say one use case might be I'm doing air conditioners for this, but if I'm doing a printer and if I wanted it to be meter based instead, I can say after every 1,000 pages is printed, someone needs to go in and actually add a new cartridge to these assets. But if I want it again monthly, like what we're doing, I'm going to go ahead and use duration for that
Interesting. Okay.
and keep the interval to any of these different types. I already know I'm doing monthly, so I'm going to select that, but I could also put it to annually if it's just once a year, weekly if we need it that often, and the due date of the month. And so if I have it for tomorrow, I'm just going to put for the 6th and the time. So I can specify that this needs done at the end of the day. And lead time. Maybe if there's special parts or special cleaners that our team needs, I can say that they need to prep for this 7 days in advance. But if I'm just giving them a 1-day notice, I'm just going to leave it as empty for right now. Of course, we wouldn't want to actually do that in real life. And from here, now that my schedule has been created, I can go ahead and publish. And if I refresh, I'm going to see my new plan here. A full refresh.
There we
There we go.
go. Excellent.
And when I open it, you'll see, even if I have it specified, and this is a tip of the hat to ServiceNow right now, all of my assets are here. I don't have any cases created yet. I can see the individual items if I need more information. And I can still come in and update my schedule if I need to. And again, on the right, I can also see more information about it here if I wanted to update something. Any records that are tied to it. And once they're created, we'll see the maintenance cases here. And now
Excellent.
for the magic behind everything. I have it favorited just because it's tedious to go in and type it out. But there are scripts in the background, and I'm just going to go ahead and execute it now. But the script that I just used is going to be called every 48 hours. And so every other night, all of the cases are manually created, automatically created. And you'll see
Ah.
I didn't have to worry about making these. As long as I have my plan and I have the assets and the schedule, the system's automatically going to let us know that we have maintenance coming up. And
Excellent.
oh, sorry.
Well, I have a question, but keep going. I can ask it after.
Something that clients are actually asking for pretty often is, do these forms work the same as any of the other forms in the background, like we already see in WSD? And short answer is yes. We can automate all of these as much as possible. We can use templates if we need to. You can see this automatically got assigned to an assignment group. That's the only thing I promise that I set up ahead of this. That way, if I already know that it's an air conditioning unit and it's at this specific location in the US, it's obviously going to have to go to that assignment group in that location. And that's just something, again, automated. I didn't have to worry about it, and the system took care of it for me.
So that was actually the perfect tee up for my question because I'm seeing, so you created the group workplace maintenance technician. So presumably some maybe larger companies that have the employee infrastructure have their own technicians maybe in-house. But I would also assume that many organizations outsource that maintenance, to vendors and other, companies. So can you have external emails, like a plumbing company or an electrician? Could you have those email addresses configured as somebody to receive those emails?
I think that that's something that we've actually set up before. They'll either have an admin, for example, for that group who takes care of that, and they can send out the notification manually. Um, but you can also go in and assign it if you have them in your vendor table, for example. If you have that email and the system knows where to send it, you can automate that process, absolutely. Um, it would be a little trickier, and I'll say not that tricky. There's definitely harder things to do in ServiceNow. But by all means, if there is an external vendor, there isn't a direct integrated link, but a notification can always be sent.
Okay, perfect.
And the next portion, I'm actually just going to go ahead and update these. And I hope that this looks familiar to the rest of case management.
The option to edit multiple records from the list view.
Absolutely. And again, exactly what we'd be seeing in the rest of the instance. But what I like and what I try to brag on the most is if I am a technician and if I just said all 5 of these cases are done, I'm going to set it to closed complete. And the system is automatically going to have somebody else verify that the work was actually completed before it closes it out. That way we don't have metrics of tickets being closed and reopened, and I get that verification. And once a user does say, yes, the maintenance occurred, or yes, the troubleshooting fixed the issue, they can say yes or no and automatically close it out. Or I can come in and verify, yes, I'm actually verifying for myself. The work is complete. Or if there's no response, again, you can always have automation the same as rest of ServiceNow, so you can automatically close these after 7 days.
Excellent. I'm sure that is good to know for facilities managers that do need to, QC certain work or sign off maybe before they can pay an invoice, for example, or something like that. So that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, and especially with having external vendors, for example, it's just a nicer safety precaution.
Yes, definitely.
And now that I'm happy with those plans and we've closed out everything, the next portion that I might be using is going to be lease administration. And so if I do have
Hmm.
these facilities and if I do have assets tied to them, I'm obviously going to have leases, I'm going to have auditing occurring, and I'm going to want to make sure I'm seeing all of that data. And I have one set up from the demo data again. And I'm just going to use this as an example. All of the fields we see here, I would be just manually filling out, but I like how much is actually tied to this record. Again, I can see a vendor. I could come in and add anyone who is looking over this lease, the administrator, for example, the number for this document, the actual terms for the lease. And if I scroll down, I see the financial information. And so I'm not having to go to different areas in ServiceNow. I'm not having to use different applications. As a fair warning, this doesn't pay the lease for you. This just stores that financial data.
So still pay your leases, everybody. Pay your rent.
If
Now,
only.
question for you, Jennifer. Do these workplace contracts need to be manually entered, or is it possible, I'm trying to think of if it's possible to either set up an integration with wherever, like whatever financial institution they have the lease with, or perhaps doing like a mass upload, if there's like an Excel template that could be created. So how do these contracts get actually created in ServiceNow?
If you did have a bulk amount of leases, we've used an Excel template before just to go in and add it. As far as an integration, I'm not aware if one actually exists yet, but that would definitely be interesting.
Okay, hear that, ServiceNow? Integrations for WSD.
The next portion that you might be seeing is going to be renewals. And so out of the box, if I open up this record and I create a new one, this is checked. If I don't want it to automatically renew, I can also just uncheck it. But as long as I have it, I can specify more information, the timeline associated, the date that I would need it to actually renew. And if I did have a cost adjustment, as we know, the cost of living likes to increase every other year, we can come in and we can also include that here. Terms and conditions, if I can get it to scroll down just a little bit, you can see this contract doesn't have terms and conditions, but we can build these out for as much repeating. I'm trying to think of a nicer word there. We can build these recurring, there we go. We can build these out for as many recurring terms and conditions as we have. And so as long as it's repeatable and reusable, I can always just select it from here. What I really like is, again, I haven't left this one workspace. I am on that same contract. I can see the different services associated to this lease, and I can see the cost for those services. Again, you can see parking, janitorial, common areas, the location that we already have, or maybe we added a new location to ServiceNow. This is going to be based off of that table. The assets covered, and I hope this looks a little familiar. I selected one of our demo data assets just to see, and as long as I have those ACs tied to it, again, one-stop shop for everything.
So do me a favor and go back for just a second to one of the areas that we already looked at, like space optimization or the preventative maintenance, and, click on that test cases or the first IT first floor to second floor, like I'm saying. So I just wanted to highlight too that the great thing about not only Workplace Central as a workspace, but really any of the workspaces that ServiceNow has created, that this is exactly what Jennifer was just talking about, where it's a one-stop shop. You can hop around. You can be looking at a space move in one tab and then hop back over to your preventative maintenance plan. And so instead of having, your ServiceNow UI, having to like hit the back arrow or use history or something like that, this is such a powerful thing, I think, about workspaces in general. So thank you for indulging me in showing that. I will let you get back to the second tab there.
And you actually just said the last thing I was going to add in with that is, even if I'm working across multiple spaces, so if I am an admin and I just want to see what the various teams are working on, I don't have to actually, like you said, go back, and all of it's saved up here. So I'm not navigating back to my history to go back, and I can have them open and working at the same time.
Love it.
Close out of that though. And the approval history out of the box, I can add an approver when I create a contract, just so someone else, maybe a coworker, maybe a manager, can verify everything's good. The finances are good. Yes, we want it to renew. And I could see that here. And again, these won't be deleted and they are individual. You can see unfiltered to just this specific contract. So I never have to worry about confusing any of that data. And the contract history, again, if I did have any audits, if I updated any of these fields, I would see a new record in the contract history saying this field changed from this value to this value.
Awesome.
And the last thing, and it's kind of similar to something that ServiceNow uses in HR, is the documents. And so from here, I can link any of the external reports that we might have. And so if I have it on paper and I've scanned it in, I can save everything in ServiceNow. And again, it is tied to this specific record. So as literal as possible, one-stop shop for everything.
Very cool.
In use cases, this is a dream for audits. I don't have to guess at where anything is. I can search for everything that I need, and I can also export all of this data the exact same as the rest of ServiceNow would export.
Now, I have a question for you, Jennifer. So, as I'm sort of looking at the icons on that left-hand ribbon, it looks like the next one might be move management. I know that a lot of customers will only implement lease administration or reservation management. We rarely see implementations for the full WSD suite of everything. So if a customer were, for example, only implementing reservation management, would they, I guess, is Workplace Central out of the box? Is that still included in, that implementation? And as a follow-up question to that, if they are just implementing Move Management, would they still see those icons, or would their Workplace Central just have the one icon or whichever one it is that they're now implementing and have, licenses for?
Out of the box, and I will say I did have to install a couple of different plugins to show as much as we have here. So you won't be seeing preventative maintenance. We won't see lease administration. Those are two different plugins that you'll have to include. Move management as well, although Workplace Central itself is just included with the WSD suite. You should still be seeing the space optimization. That way you can go through and use any of the spaces. You can get those metrics of what you're already using, as well as the event planner. And I can skip ahead for that. It is just a nice leeway.
Perfect.
And the event
So, yeah.
planner, exactly like you said, reservations.
So this is not, so I was thinking move management, but that is maybe presumably for something else. So yes, interesting. Okay, so this is like the reservation management dashboard, if you will. Is that correct? Ish.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you're just getting that different view of what you would have been seeing elsewhere, but interactive in the exact same way as you're used to. The only other item that we have for today is going to be that move management, like you were just saying. And I hope you remember earlier, we chose not to create that project to lump together all of our move cases.
Yep.
From here, I can look out and I can see all the metrics. I can see how many of my managers are actually using projects, maybe if that's causing us an overwhelming amount of unassigned tasks. We can drill down into any of these individual requests. And I also have the option to create a new project at any point in time. And to see that here, again, it was the IT move. And you'll notice I haven't touched any of the conditions yet. As long as this move request is active and it currently doesn't have a project, everything's about to be lumped together within this one project.
And can you give us a use case or maybe an example of when a customer would use multiple projects as part of one move?
I would say initializing WSD, this is something that our team would try to do just to help and just to lessen a little bit of the burden. Um, but maybe if they have a reorganization, if they have a renovation, or if they chose to let a lease expire and now they have this number of neighborhoods that have to move or this large number of users, they would actually use this just to bulk move everything at once.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And
And I'm
from there,
curious too. Well, sorry, I will let you finish the move management, but I'm curious at some point if you can share, because it seems like there's a bit of overlap, if you think about a Venn diagram between the space optimization and the move management. So I'm curious, maybe if I were a facilities manager and I needed to move people, when would I use the space optimization and when would I use the move management?
if I were that facilities manager, the space optimization is for visualizing, verifying. So if I am sharing it with you, for example, building out that scenario, building out the movement itself, seeing it, looking at the stack plan, however I best decide that it suits me and we benefit, um, getting it approved, confirmed, moving through the life cycle, and then again, at the end, when we actually do deploy it and everything is manually being created for me, I would say that is the end of space optimization, and that is where move management starts to take over. Um, I know that we are focusing on just Workplace Central for today, but the other aspects of ServiceNow. So if I was a manager and I created a move request, either just on the back end in the database, or if I'm an end user and I asked to move my desk from floor 1 to floor 2 in the service portal or in the employee center, that's all move management. And that's where it actually lumps and groups together, and space optimization would never touch those requests.
Gotcha. That is the perfect explanation. So it sounds like space management is the strategizing, the planning, the move management is the actual execution. And it sounds like, I know this is a very common theme in these Flow at Work podcasts that I talk about a lot, but the more that one customer is using ServiceNow for, the more powerful it is because, if you need to execute a move and you need requests to go to IT or, HR or these other teams and workflows within the system, move management can sort of link all that together. Is that a correct statement?
Exactly like you said, IT won't have to worry about moving their equipment. The more that an organization is keeping up to date on their data, keeping their tables clean, I can have all of my equipment automatically tied to that request. Um, if I wanted to move an entire neighborhood of users, again, IT or HR, I never have to manually worry about missing something. So as clean as the instance is as easy as our job is going to be.
We love that. We love easy jobs. Yes.
And again, the last thing that we just did was just grouping any that were unassigned that didn't have an existing project. We've gone ahead and included them in this new one. But if I did have any of those stragglers, so if I missed one of their coworkers and he or she had to manually submit that request, I could always come in and add them on their own here. Or if I accidentally included it in the wrong project, I can also filter it down here. So I can say it's in a different one and I can move it over. Say these two. And now when I go back and refresh, automatically added.
Look at that.
And we already covered most of Workplace Central, and so I will stop demoing now if there's any crazy in-depth questions or something I might have went too fast over?
No, I think this was perfect. I mean, if I were a customer getting this demo, I would sign the check today. No,
Oh
this
my
was
goodness.
perfect, Jennifer. I always hear of your legendary demos, and I feel, so lucky that I got to have this one-on-one demo with you, and I'm excited to share it with the world. So, um, this was perfect. And Jennifer, I really appreciate your time today. I know how busy you are with projects, so I will let you get back to your day, to your sweet baby Nate and your family. But this was wonderful, and thank you for being on Flow at Work.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.